morning, guys. I wanted to talk to you about what we do on days that are going to be super nice. Like in the fall, you can get 70s, 60s, and really bright skies. So on those days, you don't really want to be running your wood stove because you are going through a lot of wood. You would have to have your windows open because in order to keep your bed of coals going, you have to constantly be putting wood in. It's not the same as a rocket mass heater, where you have this mass that has absorbed all the heat and then lets it out slowly throughout the day. This is only hot as long as there's wood and heat inside the firebox. So, as you can see, I am wearing a vest. I don't know if I can show you my feet. I'm wearing snow boots in the house. They're clean. I haven't been out to do chores in them. And I have the thermostats set, I believe, at 60, 55, 60, 65. I don't think I have it as high as 65. And the reason for that is that if we do get a little bit cold in the night, the heaters do turn on, but it has to get down to like 55 degrees in order for them to turn on. And the likelihood of that is pretty slim since we kept the house warm during the day. And on a warm day like that, even just breathing brings heat, generates heat in the house. Having the windows, the blinds on the windows open means that the sun can come in and warm your house up as long as it's a bright day. So that's how we handle warm days. It is, I wouldn't say it's nippy in here, but it's not necessarily comfort level warm. I don't think it's 72. I think it's in the probably about 68. So the girls have their sweaters on. When it's cold like that, the important thing is to make sure that you eat enough and make sure that when you go outside you stay super warm so you're not getting chilled and then coming into a slightly chilly house. So it's kind of about self-care, being aware of how to take care of yourself in the cold outside and in a chilly inside and in a hot inside, because even on cold days, if I have this running in order to cook, it's too hot in here to really be comfortable, and then we have to open windows. And it's important to kind of monitor your moisture. If you're dehydrating, if you're drying clothes by the fire, you need to have windows open in order to move that moisture out. You need to have fans going to protect your house. And it's why it's so exciting to have the rocket mass heater downstairs, is because with that stove, you don't have to worry about all those variables. You heat it up, you put it in, you flip your switch to put the heat into the rocks, into the pebbles in the bench. If it gets too hot, you just let those pebbles warm up a little bit more. They absorb the heat so that it's not overwhelming. And then you have your lovely warm night where all the pebbles release their heat, and yet you don't have to have a fire going. So this is fantastic for what it does, but it is not an exact science. It's more of a, you use your house as a tool. You open and close windows, you use your stove, and you put in wood or don't put in wood, depending on if you're cooking, depending on if you're dehydrating, depending on if you're heating, depending on if the electricity is out. If our electricity was out and it was a super, super cold day, I would get up and I would continue to put wood into this stove at night. The reason for that is that this chimney is not an aircrete chimney. It will not stay warm through the night. It is just air insulating it, which means that in the morning, if it's been a really cold night, sometimes you can have smoke coming back into the house because it has a hard time getting out a chimney that's that cold. And so again, that's why the aircrete chimney that's attached to the aircrete rocket mass heater is so nice, is because that chimney retains its own heat. It is insulated, but it is also a heat sink. So when super, super cold temperatures come, you want to be so careful that you don't want to get chilled, because if it is an emergency situation and power is down and roads are blocked, you really don't want anybody getting sick. So these are my apples and peach skins that were leftovers from when I made jam, and we dehydrated them on the stove. And then these are the prunes off of our tree. I don't know if you can see them very well. Prunes. Whoops. Prunes off of our tree. that we have been dehydrating on the stove. We haven't tried jerky yet. I do have an enormous bowl full of fresh side pork that I am salting right now so that we can smoke it out in the smokehouse. And we just got a lot going on. This week we do need to clean out the chimney for the cook stove. It's been burning on and off for about 2 months now, and it's just really good to stay on top of that when you have nice days. I'm seriously tempted to go up and clean it myself. I'd rather wait until John is here to help me, because one person cleaning the inside of the stove and one person cleaning the chimney is very efficient and much easier than just one person doing it. But I don't know if that's how far we'll go. I don't know that I want to wait until John gets here on the weekend, because we have such nice days right now. It's supposed to rain here in another few days and get colder, and that's not when you want to be up cleaning a chimney. So we'll see what we get done. They say all you need is love, but I think it's all you need is salt. This is half a pig's worth of bacon. It's called side pork. And I have just transferred it out of this bowl. You don't want to use metal, but it was the biggest container I had in the moment, and it sat for 1 day. It sat for 1 day in the metal. Now we have it in a tub, and it would be really smart of me just to drill holes in the bottom of this so that the liquid can drip out, but I'm not going to, because I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants. It was a gift, and so I didn't have all the equipment quite ready. I do have a mix of brown sugar and salt. On the bottom one, there's a little bit of saltpeter on that one and hickory smoke flavor to experiment. So just 1 piece here, and then the rest is just salt. And this is what it looks like after sitting for 1 day. If I had drilled holes, well, if whatever I'd had it in had holes, then I could have just reused the salt and all the liquid would have dripped out. As it is, I'm now going to go dump this in the driveway, because you don't want it in anything you're ever going to be growing things in, because it won't let things grow. Salt kills things or retards bacterial growth, and plants and animals need bacteria, so that's why you can't do too much salt. What I do is not generally pretty when I'm doing it. Butchering is not pretty when I'm doing it. Milking is not really pretty when I'm doing it. Rendering lard is not really pretty when I'm doing it. This has been on the stove for, I believe, 4 days. And it's just been on the stove that long because I haven't got around to it. So I've kept the heat on so that it doesn't go bad, but it's also taken a while for it to render down. We had it in a smaller pot, and I didn't have the heat quite high enough, so it was kind of rendering, but not really. So now because I don't have the wood stove going today, because it's going to be 60 degrees, it'll be too hot to have the wood stove on. I did put it on the regular stove, and I have turned the heat up a little bit. I already have 1, 2, 3 jars full. You want to use clean jars, and do your best to not use your towels or anything else to clean up any of the mess. Use paper towels, and then compost the paper towels, because the fat it will just make a huge mess. And try to get all the grease out, all the everything out before you wash any of your dishes. Use a lot of paper towels at this point. And we use this for cooking instead of butter. If we're going to be frying something, we'll use this or duck fat instead of butter. We only use butter for like bread, something where it's like a topping instead of a cooking resource. This whole pot was full of fat, and it's going to render down to about maybe 2 gallons worth of rendered lard. And I'm not going to put it in the fridge right now. I'm going to wait I'm gonna wait until it is cool before I put it in the fridge, and some of it I'm gonna leave downstairs in the cool room and some of it I'm gonna leave in the fridge and see how I like the flavor. We have made butter with our goat's milk, but you need to have at least a gallon going through your cream separator to make it worth it. 2 gallons is definitely better. And then, even though we liked the butter, the amount of work that goes into it compared to just rendering fat that is a byproduct of our other animals, I don't want to waste that byproduct. And I actually really prefer the flavor of lard and duck fat to cooked homemade butter. It can smell and taste very rancid if you're cooking with that instead of putting it on bread. The other thing is, we don't like the flavor of goat's milk or cow's milk that has had all the cream removed. We like to drink it whole fat, and so we don't keep a cream separator anymore. We just use what we have in its whole state, and it works better for us. You can see that I'm warming my jar next to the pot. You don't want to take a cold jar and put this hot fat into it. It'll crack the jar. So I just have it here. I don't have a high heat on the stove, but it's warm enough to warm the bottom of that jar up a little bit. And the reason I have the strainer is because some of this fat just was not rendering down the way I needed it to. And I needed to get some of the finished fat out before it could finish rendering. And now that I have a gallon out, the rest of the fat is starting to render a lot better. And I haven't rendered lard in, I think, 4 years. But I'm going to start experimenting with it in my baking more than I did previously. And it should save me a lot of money as far as buying cooking oils. I mean, this fat is free. It comes off your pig. This one was even more free because Melanie from Road to the Farm, she just left on her big adventure. They're going to RV across the country as a family. And so she couldn't use this, so she gave me half a side of pork plus all this fat. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure to use it up. And I'm going to take my cold jar and put it here on the side. In fact, I have some of my other jars that I can't can with, and I might as well use them. We use them a lot for drinking out of or for storing food in the fridge because we don't like to use plastic. So I might as well use them for this. The only problem is I might need to switch my my funnel to one that's a little bit narrower. And that's what it looks like. Alright, this is what is left over. If I were to continue taking the oil off and cooking it down, it would get crispy and then it would be what's called crackling. But what I like to do with it is freeze it in these individual containers, and I feed it to the chickens on really cold days. And in my opinion, it is reminiscent for the chickens of the fat you get from bugs. They seem to do really well with it. And they eat one and then I pop out another one. I don't have a lot. In fact, I just found another package of lard that I need to do down. So, on to the next project. These have to go in the fridge and solidify. Once they solidify, I pop them out and put them in a bag. I want to show you that I do render lard on the wood stove and actually prefer it, because it's easier to control the heat. Right now I am boiling off excess water.